Luke chapter 2 is the best known rendition of the two renditions of the birth story of Jesus as it's recorded in the Bible. Uh, it's a beautiful story. It's often read during this time of the year or any time that we're talking about the birth of Christ. It has some details in it, but the details are very general. And really, there's not a lot of the specific things I think our curiosity would be interested in knowing about. Also, it's interesting that I think most of us have a mental perception of sort of how it all played out that's much more been formed by movies or television shows or Christian art or even sometimes people preaching about this and asserting things that simply are not in the text. And so what I want to do this morning is two things, is urge you to first of all read that text and get the general layout of it as the Holy Spirit and Luke presented to us. And second, point out and just leave unknown at this time for our curiosity and our wondering what really did happen in some of these things. First of all, Luke is always, throughout his book and in the book of Acts, very careful to give us the historical setting about who's in control, who's in the government, who's the leaders, who are the leaders at that time. So he does that, and he also states the purpose of why Joseph and Mary are going to Jerusalem. As many people or all people were commanded to do, they were going back to their cities of origin where their family originated from. So both Joseph and Mary from the house of David or the lineage of David are to go back to Bethlehem, the city of David, where the king grew up about 1,000 years, a little over 1,000 years before that, to be registered. So they travel from Galilee to the north and their hometown of Nazareth down to Bethlehem, which is just a few miles outside of Jerusalem. And what we're not told is how they got there, particularly how did Mary get there? She's very large with child, very great with child, as the King James Version says at this point. In other words, close to the time of her delivery. And it's almost always depicted, and I think most of us have this concept of her riding on a donkey. In my office, I have a painting that I'm very partial to that shows her riding on a donkey. And but it just doesn't say that, and we don't know that women were very hardy back then. She probably was a very healthy young woman. Did she walk? Did she ride on a donkey? Did she ride in a cart? We don't know. Another thing that's often assumed and believed is that they got into Bethlehem just a few hours before she was to have this baby. And it doesn't say that. It just says they were there, and then when the time came for her to be delivered. So did they arrive a few days before, a week or before, even 2 weeks before? And once they got there, they realized they were so close to the time that they decided to stay there. Of course, one of the most famous things about it is their rejection, being turned away from the inn. And I've heard many stories, and you probably have too, about the harshness and the meanness of this innkeeper and whoever was, whoever else could have been involved that turned them away. I heard a wonderful story by Paul Harvey many years ago where he said there may be a whole different take on that. The inns in that area were sometimes nothing more than brothels. It may not have been a place that really they needed to go, and also at the very best, they were very loud, dirty, public places, and so the privacy and the really relative cleanness that she may have had where the baby was born may have been a blessing. It may have been the kindness of the innkeeper who had them go either to the stable, a form of usually a dugout that's a part of the kind of the back part of the house, either there at the end. We don't know that if it was connected to the inn at all. It may have been another family that, out of compassion for this young couple and what was about to happen, provided them a place, said, well, here, just use our stable. Another thing, sometimes the nativity scenes or the creches depict animals being present. We don't know if that was true. They could have been, or it may have been a place that wasn't being used and was just there and it was available to them, and someone out of generosity, kind of like if push came to shove, worse situations, somebody might say, well, at least you can stay in our garage or our unused barn or shed for a while. And so anyway, we do know it was a place that animals had been, at least, because the manger, the feed trough, that's where, as the song famously lets us know, Jesus laid his little head. He was put, after being born, wrapped in swaddling clothes, which is more than a receiving blanket. It was a custom at that time to wrap cloths around the newborn and reproduce for that baby, the effect of still being in the womb, it was a way for them to transition. All of this, we're just given hints, and sometimes we don't even understand the cultural implications. But the main point is that she did have the baby. One more thought there before we close for today. Was there a midwife present? I have no reason to automatically assume that this was a painless or easy birth. She probably struggled with it without the blessings of anesthesia. It had been a custom for many centuries, way back even into the time they were still in Egypt, for the Jewish people, the Hebrew people, to use midwives. So did someone contact, did Joseph go and find a midwife to assist? It's entirely possible that she did. But the main point is, this baby that's been prophesied and predicted and planned for so long from God way back into eternity, as we've been saying, was now finally born. Other exciting events are going to follow, and we hope you will join us tomorrow for the last of these lessons. God bless you.